She smiled at me that night, calm, steady, almost daring, and said, "You don't even know how deep this could go." I thought she meant the conversation, but what she really meant was us. The evening began like so many others, a quiet gathering after a long week. Soft music played through a worn speaker, the kind that carried more warmth than clarity. She stood by the window, wine glass in hand, framed by the amber light spilling through the sheer curtains. Her laughter drifted across the room, low, unhurried, with that kind of confidence that only comes from living long enough to stop performing for anyone. I'd met her before, briefly. She was a friend of a friend, someone I'd exchanged polite smiles with at other get-togethers. But that night, something was different. Maybe it was the way she listened. Not just with her eyes, but with her whole posture, leaning slightly in, head tilted, as if she was quietly weighing the honesty of every word you said. When I finally found myself talking to her, I remember noticing the small details first. The fine lines that appeared near her eyes when she smiled, the way her fingers brushed the rim of her glass absent-mindedly, the faint scent of jasmine that lingered as she turned toward me. It wasn't just beauty, it was presence. She carried herself with a kind of grace that made the room fall away. Our conversation began with something ordinary: music, travel, late-night routines, but somewhere between the pauses and glances, it deepened. She spoke about how people stop letting themselves feel after a certain age, how comfort becomes safer than passion. Her tone wasn't sad, but quietly accepting, like someone who had learned to live with beautiful ghosts. I didn't realize I'd been staring until she met my gaze. There was a soft challenge in her eyes, a flicker of curiosity, maybe recognition. Then, with a tender smile, she said it. "You don't even know how deep this could go." It wasn't flirtation. It was a quiet truth, dropped into the space between us like a stone in still water. The words seemed to hang there, rippling through everything familiar. Something in me shifted. I became suddenly aware of how close she was, the warmth of her shoulder near mine, the way her breath softened when she exhaled. My chest felt tight, not with anxiety, but with the awareness of something beginning. I didn't answer her. I couldn't. She smiled again, almost knowingly, and turned back toward the window. Outside, the city lights blinked against the night sky, small, restless, and far away. For a long moment, I just stood there, listening to the quiet hum of the room, wondering what she had seen in me that made her say that. And somewhere deep down, I knew, whatever this was, it wouldn't be simple. It would ask for honesty, patience, maybe even pain. But in her presence, the idea of depth didn't scare me. It felt like an invitation. Days passed, but her words lingered, like a faint echo that wouldn't quiet down. "You don't even know how deep this could go." It became a line I caught myself repeating in my head at random moments, during my morning coffee, while scrolling through work emails, even when the evening light hit my apartment walls in that same honey gold shade I'd first seen her in. I told myself it was nothing, a passing comment, a spark mistaken for something more. But when our paths crossed again a week later, I knew I'd been lying to myself. It was at a small bookstore cafe downtown, the kind of place that smelled of paper, roasted beans, and quiet conversation. She was sitting alone near the back, reading, her glasses resting low on her nose. I hesitated, debating whether to say hello, when she looked up, as if she'd sensed me standing there. That same calm smile curved her lips. "You found my favorite hiding place," she said softly, closing her book. "I wasn't looking for you," I replied, though even as I said it, we both knew it wasn't true. She gestured to the seat across from her. "Then stay anyway. Pretend you were meant to." We sat there for hours talking about everything and nothing, the kind of conversation that didn't need a destination. She told me about her work, her late-night walks by the river, how she collected small moments instead of souvenirs. I told her things I rarely shared, my restlessness, my fear of wasting time on things that didn't mean anything. Sometimes, between words, there was silence, the good kind, the kind that feels full instead of empty. Her hand rested near mine on the table, our fingers close enough for the faintest brush when one of us moved. That touch, brief, almost accidental, sent a quiet current through me, Not fireworks, not drama, just a deep, grounding awareness. I watched the light shift across her face as afternoon faded into dusk. The small lines around her mouth deepened when she smiled. There was something steady about her, a peace I didn't realize I'd been craving. When it was time to leave, neither of us moved right away. The cafe had grown quiet, chairs stacked in corners, lights dimmed to a warm glow. She looked at me for a long moment, then reached out, her fingertips lightly brushing my wrist. "Careful," she said with a faint smile. "Some things don't stay casual once they start to mean something." Her touch lingered even after she withdrew her hand. And as I walked home, the night felt strangely alive, every sound sharper, every thought louder. I knew what she meant now. This wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was the beginning of something that neither of us had asked for, but both of us had quietly invited. The next few weeks blurred into a rhythm I hadn't expected. We didn't make plans, yet somehow we kept finding each other. At the cafe, at late afternoon walks by the river, even at the quiet Sunday markets where she bought flowers she claimed were just for the scent, not the symbolism. Every meeting felt unplanned but inevitable. And every time, something in the air seemed to stretch a little thinner between us. She had this way of speaking that slowed everything down. When she told stories, she didn't rush to the ending. She lingered on details, as if the small things mattered more than conclusions. I found myself listening differently, memorizing the soft rise and fall of her voice, the pauses she left hanging when she wanted me to read between the lines. One evening, we met at the Riverside Cafe again. The sun was sinking low, the sky turning lavender and gold. She wore a light scarf, the wind catching its edges like a whisper. I don't remember what we were talking about before it happened. Something simple, something safe, but then she said quietly, "You look for meaning in everything. That's why you get hurt so easily." It should have been a casual comment, but the way she said it, gentle, not pitying, cut deeper than I expected. I tried to deflect with a smile, but she saw through it instantly. She always did. "You don't have to hide behind charm," she said, her gaze steady on mine. "I like your honesty more than your smoothness." Her words left me still. I wasn't used to being seen that clearly. For a moment, I didn't know what to do with my hands, my breath, my thoughts. Then she reached out, slow, deliberate, and brushed a strand of hair off my forehead. Her fingers lingered there for just a heartbeat too long. It wasn't bold, but it was decisive. My chest tightened. Every sense felt heightened. The faint scent of her perfume, the warmth of her fingertips, the way her thumb trembled just slightly before she drew her hand back. Neither of us spoke. The silence between us was no longer calm. It was charged, fragile, waiting. She looked away first, sipping her coffee, pretending nothing had happened. "Sometimes," she murmured, "connection is a dangerous thing. It asks for more than we're ready to give." The rest of the evening passed in careful words and soft laughter, but the tone had shifted. Every look carried a quiet awareness. Every touch, even unintentional, lingered a little longer. When I walked her to her car, she thanked me in that soft, musical tone that always made my name sound like something worth remembering. She didn't hug me, but her hand brushed my arm as she said goodbye, a small touch that said everything we weren't brave enough to voice yet. And when she drove away, I stood under the fading streetlight, realizing that what scared me most wasn't losing control. It was how natural it already felt to care for her. It had rained that evening, a steady, patient drizzle that left the streets shining under the amber glow of streetlights. The world felt quieter than usual, like everything had softened. She had texted me earlier, asking if I wanted to stop by. "Just tea and company," she'd written. Nothing more. But somehow, it felt like an invitation to something unspoken. Her apartment was warm and dimly lit, the kind of space that told stories about the person who lived in it. Books stacked unevenly on the shelves, candles half-burned beside framed photographs, a record spinning something soft and slow. She greeted me barefoot, wearing a loose sweater that hung off one shoulder. For a moment, I just stood there, caught between familiarity and awe. "Tea's in the kitchen," she said, smiling that slow, tender smile that always seemed to disarm me. We sat by the window, cups between our hands, watching the rain streak down the glass. At first, we talked the way we always did, lightly, circling around the edges of meaning. But then, somewhere between stories and silence, something shifted. She leaned back, eyes thoughtful, and said quietly, "You remind me of someone I used to know, someone who believed in people too easily." There was no bitterness in her tone, just memory. I waited, sensing she needed space to let out. "He was kind," she continued, "but kindness can be exhausting when it's not returned. After a while, I started expecting less from everyone. It's easier that way." I didn't interrupt. I just listened, feeling the weight of her honesty settle between us. Then she looked at me, her eyes reflecting the soft gold of the lamp beside us. "You make me remember what it's like to want again, to be curious, to care. It's terrifying." Her voice caught slightly on the last word, and I felt something inside me give way. Without thinking, I reached out and placed my hand over hers. The moment I did, her breath hitched, not from surprise, but from recognition. Her skin was warm, her fingers delicate, yet steady as they curled slightly beneath mine. We stayed like that for a long time, saying nothing. The rain became our rhythm, a quiet backdrop to everything we couldn't say out loud. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I don't know what this is," she said, "but I don't want to ruin it by pretending it's nothing." I nodded, my thumb brushing gently against her knuckles. "We don't have to name it," I said. "Let's just be honest with it." She smiled then, not the careful, composed smile she often wore, but something softer, unguarded. It felt like trust. When I left later that night, the air was cool and damp, carrying the faint scent of jasmine from her window. I didn't look back, not because I didn't want to, but because I knew something real had just begun to unfold. It wasn't love yet, but it was truth, and that, somehow, felt even deeper. The days after that night felt different. Quieter somehow, but charged, like the calm that comes before lightning touches the horizon. We still saw each other, but the ease we once shared had changed shape. Every glance lingered too long, every word carried weight. She'd begun to retreat into small silences, the kind that made me wonder if she was trying to protect herself, or me. One Saturday, she invited me to help her rearrange her studio. She painted in her spare time. Nothing she ever showed anyone, she said, just the kind of art you make when you're trying to breathe. When I arrived, the smell of turpentine and coffee filled the air. Canvas frames leaned against the wall, half-finished colors spread across them in restless strokes. For a while, we worked side by side in an easy rhythm, moving books, dusting shelves, finding small excuses to talk. She hummed to herself softly, barefoot again, hair loosely tied. There was something about her that day, unguarded, almost wistful. When we stopped to rest, she sat cross-legged on the floor, sipping coffee. I sat across from her, a few feet away, watching as she absently traced the rim of her mug. "You look like you're carrying too many thoughts," she said suddenly, glancing up. I laughed quietly. "Maybe I am. Maybe you're one of them." Her expression faltered, not in discomfort, but in quiet recognition. She set her mug down and looked at me, really looked. "You shouldn't say things like that," she whispered. "Why not?" "Because it makes me want to believe them." Her honesty hit me like a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. The air between us grew still, almost fragile. I could hear the faint ticking of a clock somewhere behind us, the slow rhythm of our breathing filling the space. She reached for one of her brushes, maybe as a distraction, maybe as a shield, but her hand trembled slightly. I moved closer, not enough to touch, but enough for her to feel my presence. "You don't have to be afraid," I said softly. Her eyes met mine, wide, uncertain, but alive. "That's the problem," she said. "I already am." I didn't know who moved first. Maybe it was both of us, two people pulled by something too honest to disguise. Our hands met halfway, her fingers slipping gently into mine. It wasn't a kiss, not even an embrace, but felt like crossing a line we'd both been standing at for far too long. Her thumb brushed across my palm, a small, trembling motion that said everything words couldn't. Then, just as slowly, she let go. "We should be careful," she murmured. I nodded, though neither of us believed we could be. When I left that afternoon, the scent of her studio clung to me. Paint, coffee, rain-dried air, and beneath it all, something more elusive, the memory of restraint barely holding. I realized then that what scared me most wasn't how much I wanted her. It was how much she wanted me too, and how neither of us knew what to do with it. The following week, we barely spoke. Not out of anger, but because silence had become the only safe place left. Everything between us had grown too heavy, too meaningful to handle casually. When we did meet, it was at the same riverside cafe, though this time the air between us carried an unspoken ache. She wore her hair pinned up, her posture composed, as if she'd wrapped herself in distance. I tried to do the same, but it didn't work. We talked about neutral things, work, the weather, a book she was reading, yet every word skirted around the real conversation we were avoiding. Her eyes met mine a few times, quick and hesitant, before she'd look away. Finally, she exhaled and said, almost to herself, "This, whatever it is, it's starting to scare me." I stayed quiet, waiting. I told myself I wouldn't do this again, she continued softly. I promised I wouldn't get close to anyone who could make me forget where the lines are. Her voice trembled, though she tried to steady it with a small smile. "You make me forget, and that's not your fault. It's mine." I wanted to reach for her hand, to tell her that what we had wasn't a mistake, that it felt like something real, but I didn't. Because for the first time, I understood what she was fighting, the fear of being seen too deeply, of losing control after years of keeping her heart carefully guarded. The silence stretched until the hum of the cafe faded into the background. Then, she whispered, "You're young. You should be with someone who doesn't have to talk herself out of wanting you." Her words stung, not because they were cruel, but because they were true. She wasn't pushing me away to hurt me. She was trying to protect us both from something she couldn't name without breaking. "I didn't choose this," I said quietly, "but I don't want to unfeel it either." That made her look up, really look. Her eyes shimmered, not with tears, but with something deeper, the ache of wanting what she thought she shouldn't have. "Don't make me believe this could last," she said. "I'm not asking for forever," I replied. "Just honesty. For a heartbeat." Neither of us moved. Then, slowly, she reached across the table, her fingers brushing mine, a fleeting touch that carried the weight of every moment we hadn't allowed ourselves. "I don't know how to do this," she whispered. "You already are," I said. She smiled then, small, sad and real. "Then promise me one thing," she murmured. "If this ever starts to hurt more than it heals, you'll walk away first." I wanted to promise. I couldn't. That night, as I watched her walk away beneath the streetlights, I felt the quiet ache of something too deep to define, a connection that lived somewhere between courage and fear. We hadn't said goodbye. We just left a pause in the story, long enough to wonder whether we'd ever find the right words to finish it. Weeks passed, the kind of weeks that move slowly, quietly, like the soft pull of a tide you don't notice until it's already changed the shoreline. We stopped meeting by the river, stopped exchanging those small, dangerous glances that used to make the world feel fragile and infinite all at once. But she was still everywhere, in the scent of jasmine after rain, in the sound of her favorite record spinning faintly in my memory, in the echo of her laugh when the world went still. I told myself that space was what we needed. Maybe it was. But space doesn't erase, it just softens the edges. One evening, I found myself walking past her street without planning to. The sun was dipping low, casting a pale, amber glow over the buildings. Her window was open. The same record I'd once heard in her apartment was playing, that quiet, yearning melody that always sounded like a secret. I hesitated, torn between going on and knocking once just to see. And then, as if the world decided for me, she stepped out. A light jacket, her hair loose, no surprise in her expression, just that small, knowing smile that always felt like home. "You still think too much," she said softly, her tone gentle, almost amused. "I never stopped," I admitted. "I just got quieter about it." We walked for a while, no destination, no need to fill the silence. It felt different now, lighter somehow, though the ache was still there, woven into every step. When we stopped by the river, the water shimmered in the fading light. She looked out across it, her profile calm, serene. You know, she said, not everything that changes us is meant to stay. Some people just open a door inside us we didn't know existed. Her words were soft, but they landed deep. I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that she had become more than a passing chapter. But when I looked at her, I understood. What we had wasn't ending. It was transforming into something quieter, truer. I reached out, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. My fingertips grazed her cheek, and she leaned into the touch for just a moment. Then she smiled. That same tender smile from the night, she said, "You don't even know how deep this could go." "I think I do now," I whispered. She nodded. Then we did something right. There were no promises, no final declarations, just that soft understanding between two people who had felt something real and refused to let it sour. Before she turned to leave, she pressed her palm lightly to my chest, right over my heartbeat. "Keep this," she said quietly. "The depth isn't about me. It's about you and what you're willing to feel." And then she walked away. The river kept moving. The music in my memory played on. And for the first time in a long time, the quiet didn't feel empty. It felt full, full of everything we had been brave enough to feel and everything that would always stay, even after goodbye.